catastrophes? All right, Mr. Hirar, I suggest you unmute you, and Mr. Mohammed Asad, you're welcome to unmute you and give your ideas of why you think it is possible.
Sir, in my opinion, the contractor
You
should
need to
plan
talk a little bit louder, please.
Sir. Sir, in my opinion, the contractor should plan ahead for such eventualities. That's why he should not get any cost for these events.
All right. Do you think, if you look at, if you think of a flood, which is a natural catastrophe, do you think a contractor can plan and allow for such cost?
If the project is located in such an area where a flood is expected, then the contractor should plan ahead for such a flood.
Yeah, but that's not a natural catastrophe. That is a event that you can expect. If you can expect a 10-year event, but what happens if you get a 100-year event? Should he expect that, or a maximum probable flood? Should he consider that?
In that event, I think considering the situations, a judgment can be made that that such a high frequency flood could be expected or not. But
a high frequency flood is not expected. That's why it's a high frequency flood.
Yes, sir. So in that case, EOT might be justified, but cost, I'm not sure about the cost.
All right, let me help you out.
Right.
Mr. Tashin Ilahi, do you want to offer some suggestion? All right, not. Okay. The reason why you do not get money on force majeure is because you've got insurance for natural catastrophes. That is the main thing. You have got that in insurance. So the other interesting thing is you can get money if it's war, hostilities, if it's even outside of your country. Why would you think is that? You can, in the text, try and give a reason. I will read what you say. Why can you consider getting money even if war is outside of the country? What would you say? Mr. Muhammad Asad, do you want to offer an opinion here?
Sir, in case of a war, because the supply chains will be affected, so in that case, cost might be justified.
Absolutely, supply chains. If you've got a war breaking out in Europe, you may have to get spares from there. You may have to get equipment from there. It does influence you. Good. Definitely, why outside the country is for supply chains. But now let's just look at the yardstick. The contractor is prevented from performing any of his, or in the pink book, any of his substantial obligations. So basically, you can only get an entitlement if you cannot do your work on a suspension. So my question, is force majeure a strong entitlement? And let's see what you say on that. When I say, is this a strong entitlement? I mean, is it a good, can the contractor get good, call it value for money? How easily can he get this entitlement? All right, let's close the poll, and I'm going to show you what is the decision, or what is your thoughts. Actually, the overall people says it is a strong entitlement. Actually, it's not a strong entitlement. You can only use that entitlement if you suspend the works. You cannot get any money, you cannot get any extension of time if you don't suspend the work, or very difficult to get that if you don't suspend the work. What is also very important to note, force majeure, if it's going to cost you more money, that's not a force majeure event. That is only making it more difficult for you, but it's not a force majeure event. You can still continue with your work. After that clarification, do you still believe it is a strong entitlement? What do you say? All right. Let's give a few more moments for the people to make comments. Okay. Let's see. Let me share with you what has been said. You see the large change in perception when you look at it from a contractual point of view. It is not so easy, and it's not such a strong entitlement. It is actually not a very good way to go. Sometimes you absolutely have to do that. And depending on how your contract is written, it may give you stronger entitlements. But force majeure, as it's written in many of these contracts, only help you if you stop, suspend all or part of the work. So do we have better entitlements? I'm going to use the same poll, and I'm going to ask you if you think there are better entitlements. We're not going to expand too much on this here. That is basically for the second session. So although this is still the same question, let's just use this as do you believe there are better entitlements, things that can give you a better chance in the COVID situation? Interesting to see the results coming in. I'm going to share it with you just now. Let's give the guys a few more moments to make a decision or their ways and their thoughts. What is actually interesting is we absolutely got a tie. Is this a strong, is there better entitlements? All right. I'm going to leave you in suspension on that one. This is what we're going to address in the second session 2 weeks from now. Okay, sometimes you need to use force majeure, or you want to use force majeure. So what do you need to do if you want to use force majeure? I put here contractor's obligation if he wants to use force majeure. But remember, it is also the employer's obligation if he wants to use force majeure. And this is the wording of FIDIX 1999. So it may be a little bit different in some of the others. One party shall give notice to the other party, not to the engineer, to the other party in the event of circumstances constituting a force majeure, and shall specify the obligations, the performance of which is or will be prevented. The notice shall be given within 14 days after the party became aware or should have become aware of the relevant event or circumstances constituting a force majeure. Now, out of interest, I'm going to use the same poll we had just now, and I'm going to ask you if you think this 14 days can have a time bar connected to it. So ignore the name, but use the same yes or no and tell me, is there a time bar connected to that 14 days? It's very interesting to see what the thoughts are, and I'm going to share that with you just now. Just going to give the people a few more moments to say what they believe. All right, so let's see what the people say. 62%, yes, there is time bar. 38%, no, there's no time bar. That's a very, very interesting result because I know that the sorry, I just wanted to get that noise away. If you look at the time bar situation in the British law, where this is coming from, time bar in the way how it's written there is only a recommendation. If you go and look at the rest of clause 20.1, which says as in the event if you do not respond within those 14 days, then you will lose your ability to, that is legally time barring. But as it is there, it is just a recommendation. I know as we as engineers often jump on the wagon and say, you didn't do your 14 days, you cannot claim. But that will not stand up in a court of law. Be careful about that. What is interesting in the new FIDIC 2017 is that you have to do additional notices every 28 days. But remember, this is also a two-way street. The contractor and the engineer, the contractor and the employer both need to be able to need to give notice if they want to use time barring. Sorry, this thing is just giving me a little bit of problems here. Okay. We are going to touch a little bit on, are there better options? And this is something I would like you to consider, especially in this case. Mr. Abidullah, I saw you put your hand up. I'm going to ask you to unmute your microphone and then share your thoughts with us.
Hello. Sir, is it time barred or not, the force majeure? The 14 days you said. I didn't get that.
If you look at that specific way how it's written, it will not stand up in a court of law because there's enough legal cases internationally, and especially in the British law and Pakistani law, strongly look at British law, which says that if it only says 14 days, that's a recommendation. It's a guideline. It is not a, you cannot use it as a time bar. You have to expand that to say it is only, you will lose your right to claim if you do not do that within a specific time period. All right, the first better option is negotiations, and specifically for the engineers here with us and for the clients here with us, is start talking with one another. It is so important, and let's understand that COVID is unprecedented. It is something which we've never seen before. It is of such a magnitude that it is better to start talking with one another. And if you don't know what to say, how to discuss it, get someone in that understands negotiations, that understand the contractual matters. Get me in as an example, and use someone that can use you, that you can use to get amicable settlements. So Tashin Eli, you've got your hand up. Would you be so kind as to share your thoughts with us? You can unmute yourself and then you can talk to us. Tashin, you've got to speak louder. We couldn't hear you. Okay. Mr. Rashid, I see you've opened your mic as well. Do you want to share something with us?
गया हुआ है सरदार शाह रोड कुत्ते की फतेह इससे हमारा ओपन बेस करना पड़ा।
I couldn't hear you well. I wonder if you could just repeat that. All right.
हमें यहाँ पे तकरीबन 3 करोड़ चाहिए कंप्लीट करने और हमारी दूसरी स्कीम है रोड फ्रॉम चक
Gents, this basically finishes off this first session. It is quite difficult. I mean, as I'm just talking to myself here and I don't get any feedback. I'm used to having feedback from people in an open discussion, which is not really the way how you can do this. But let's use this opportunity and we open the floor for questions and comments. And let's start off by people raising their hands and unmuting them. And then I will just ask you one by one to ask your question or make the comments that you would like to make. Mr. Muhammad Asad, would you like to unmute you and ask and talk?
Yes, thank you, sir. Sir, you told us that for the FME force majeure to be effective, there has to be stoppage or suspension of works. I was wondering, in case of partial suspension of works, will this force majeure event still be valid?
It depends on which contract are you using. If you're using FIDIX 20, if you're using the FIDIX, most of your later FIDIX from 1999 and on, you have to not be able to do your work. If you look at the pink book, the bank, it says for substantial work. So if you stop minor works, that is not going to give you a force majeure. But if you do have large works or substantial work, that will allow you force majeure, in general speaking. Does that answer your question?
Right, sir. Thank you. Can I ask one more connected question?
Sure, please. Please go ahead.
Sir, in some force majeure events, there is, instead of direct impact, there is indirect impact. Some construction sites might be a little bit insulated from, because normally construction sites are in far off areas. And if they have all of their raw materials and all the resources available nearby, and there is minimum interruption from the force, from the broader force majeure environment, can the still contractor claim for the force majeure, considering that it has affected everyone else?
Remember, what is the yardstick? The yardstick is how does it influence you on site?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is costing you more money, that is not force majeure. If you have to suspend your work, or if you have to suspend parts of your work, that is force majeure. But remember, just Pakistan Engineering Council Red Book does not have force majeure in contract. You cannot use force majeure at all there.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Muhammad Raza, do you want to share some thoughts with us?
Yes, I would like to ask two questions, if you allow me.
Mr. Muhammad,
Hello, are you listening?
disappeared there on us.
Sir, can you listen me?
Yes, I'm listening. I can hear you now. Please proceed.
Yeah, I would like to ask two questions. First, I would like to ask, can you hear my voice or not?
I can hear your voice, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. First question is that COVID-19 situation is evolving situation. Like I'll repeat again that COVID-19 situation is evolving situation. Like it evolved first in China and other countries well before the time know that this is the evolving situation and they might get disturbed or influenced in some way or another way with the COVID-19. So the contractors and the employees that they have to prepare for that force majeure. Second question is that in our country, Pakistan, our PM has allowed construction industry to work in full swing without getting any effect of the corona. So how you will see both these? Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mohammed, your first question is, you've got the problem outside of the country and it may influence you later. And again, we go back to the yardstick. Until you've got to suspend your works or until you've got to suspend some of your works, some of the more critical works, and if you have got force majeure written into your contract, you cannot use force majeure. If the whole and everywhere stops working except your site, you cannot use force majeure. If the whole of the works continue and for some specific reason, which is in those list of items, and you've got to stop your work, then you've got force majeure. So your question is basically, can we have force majeure when it's a problem in China? No, except if there's war that breaks out in China and the influence is of such a way that it influences you to stop your work on site or stop critical parts of your work on site. In those cases, you can. If not, you cannot. The second question is, the Prime Minister said, the Prime Minister said the work has to continue. So your work doesn't stop, it's not force majeure. You have got to look at other entitlements. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to add, if you allow me.
Please proceed.
Okay, you said that other entitlement like extension of time because in our country we didn't suspend our work. A force majeure occurs or come into existence when you allow your contractor to stop the work or suspend the work. Because in our case we didn't suspend, but it affects in another way. Like you have said that when war broke out in another country and the chains get affected. But in our case, in the present case of COVID-19, you see that most of the contractors working in our Pakistan are Chinese contractors, and they import from China. So you see that when there is a pandemic situation, you can't import things. But how we compare the war broke out in other countries and supply chains get affected, and in the current scenario, like a pandemic is in China, and we can't import their machinery, equipments, or other materials to avail.
The question is, was it so strong that you had to stop your work? Yes, you've got force majeure if you're using FIDIX 20, 1999 or later. If the problem was not so big that you didn't suspend the work, it's not force majeure. Then you have to look at something else. And this is what we're going to look at in the second session 2 weeks from now. Mr. Abid Ullah, do you want to unmute and discuss with us and share with us your thoughts?
Hello, sir. Sir, if we get entitled to extension of time due to a force majeure or due to catastrophe, so are you entitled to escalation or de-escalation due to extension of time in that case?
Extension of time is extension of time. It's not money. A lot of people think that if you've got extension of time, that automatically give you an entitlement to money. It's not the case. Extension of time is separate from money. Sometimes extension of time will give you the entitlement to prolongation costs or other costs. But generally, just extension of time does not give you entitlement to money. You've got to look at another entitlement that will give you a cost adjustment. Does that answer your question? Do you want to unmute and respond?
Yes, sir, got it. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, Engineer Siraj Ahmed, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Sir, my question is that you have said that 14 days period from time bar view is sufficient for the other party to solve the issues?
No, that's not what I said. That 14 days says the one party must notify the other party of a potential claim or a problem in force majeure. Let's say, for an example, you've got a major flood coming through your project, half of your equipment is washed away and half of your works has been washed away. You consider that as a force majeure. Within 14 days from that happening, you have to advise the other party that something has happened which prevents you from continuing with your work. It doesn't say you've got to fix it within 14 days. It says you must advise the other party within that 14 days.
Means
Do you
we
understand that?
can, yes, of course, understand. It means we can say that 14 days are variable for the purpose of advice to other party.
If you read the contract as it is, it says 14 days. It doesn't say 28 or 50 or 60 days. You have to advise it when the problem happens. The purpose is people need to be open and share what it is. Interesting enough, FIDIX 2017 says that also the 14 days, but it says you have got no right until you've made the notification. So if you notify on day 10, you don't have any entitlement for anything that happens from day 1 to day 9.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Mohammed Kashif Zahir, Mohammed Kashif Zahir, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, sir. What if a contract doesn't have a force majeure clause or the force majeure clause doesn't address the specific circumstances of COVID-19?
You'll see in first question, if you don't have a force majeure clause, you don't have force majeure. You don't have that entitlement. It is something that you do not have in any of the laws of there's nowhere in Pakistan contract law that says force majeure. Although it's been recognized in certain cases and in certain court cases that there is something like a force majeure, It is not written into the contract. So if you do not have force majeure written into the contract, you cannot use force majeure. Then you need to look at another entitlement. All right. Now, let's say you do have got force majeure written into your contract. You will see that it gives you usually 4 or 5 reasons that it has to comply with. Could it be foreseen? Could you have taken any protection against this? And if you can say yes, no, 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 you can get it classified as a force majeure. But then your second challenge is, will that allow you an entitlement, or to what level of entitlement does it allow you? As we looked at earlier on the FIDIC 1999 and later, it only gives you an entitlement if you suspend part of your works. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and the other question is, what quantifiable impact is sufficient to demonstrate that COVID-19 had a material impact?
Suspension of part of your works.
Okay.
That is where it makes it difficult, and where you really need to bring in specialists when it comes to those things, both on putting a claim on the table or reviewing reviewing the entitlement of a claimant if you are the defendant or if you're the respondent on the situation. And the last slide again, gents, you'll see my details. You're more than welcome to contact me. This is what we are doing and where we can definitely help you. Mr. Azaz Khalil, if you would like to unmute your microphone and discuss with us. Azaz Khalil. All right, let's move on then, Mr. Muhammad Raza. If you can unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much allowing me again to ask another question. Sir, I would like to have your comment on that. I asked again that you said that war broke out in another country and supply chain get affected. But in this case, the supply chain get affected, but not due to war, but due to pandemic, like from China. And you see that most of the contractor in Pakistan, they are importing the equipments, materials, tools from the China. So it's also get affected. So how do you see that war broke out, supply chain get affected, and this supply chain get affected? Are they same, or they have to be viewed in another perspectives? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Raza, tell me, which contract are you using, or which contract are you talking about?
So you got my question, or I have to repeat again?
Which FIDIC? Mr. Raza, just tell me, which FIDIC are you using? All right, I don't think he can hear me, but let me answer it in a general manner. Usually the influence that you have, in this case where you've got spares and or personnel or equipment from China and you can't get it. The question is it force majeure? The chances that your contract will tell you that it's force majeure is very good. Then you look at what is your entitlement. And your entitlement is usually, it has to be large enough to suspend part or whole of your works. If you can continue and you can continue slower, or it's more expensive, or you have to do other things, generally, FIDIX does not give you any entitlement under force majeure. That's when you need to start looking at other alternatives.
What other alternatives might be? Like you can tell us like one or two things to think upon or go on.
All right, Mr. Raza, that specific other entitlements is what we're going to talk about in the second session. So I'm not going to expand into that. I'm going to keep you in anticipation for the second session on that. And that is only going to be on the other alternatives, which personally I believe is, as a general rule, the better course. Let's see if Mr. Isis Khalil, if he can now unmute and ask his question. All right, while he's still waiting, then Fawad, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
So, as there is no force majeure clause in 1987 FIDIC contract, can we use employer risk clauses to claim for COVID?
I don't have it right in front of me, but I would think you could, you've got to look carefully at what is the employer's risk. I would think employer's risk may not, that COVID may not be an employer's risk. It's just so outside of the line. That's something I need to look at the specific contract. Off the top of my head, I cannot answer you. If you want to send me an email just as a reminder, I will do this offline. I will have a look at it and I will let you know. Okay, Mr. Mohammed Amir, would you like to unmute and ask a question?
Hello, are you listening, sir?
I'm listening, yes.
Yes. My question is, sir, as you have cleared that if the work has not been suspended, then it will not fall under the clause of force majeure. And I was seeing Bank Harmonized Edition 2010, and in this definition part, 19.13, there was basically a riot, commotion, disorder, strike, or lockout by persons other than the contractor's personnel. So if we see in the COVID-19 scenario, the sites are mostly not suspended, but they are running by managing in some difficult way. But there is almost a lockout in the world, and then most of the countries also. In Pakistan, now the lockdown has been eased a little bit. Can this fall under this category? Because lockout by persons has been made by the government. They are not under the contractors.
That is one of the alternative entitlements. It's not force majeure. If you look at the force majeure, it says if the contractor is prevented from performing any of his, that is the ordinary FIDIC 99, and the Pink Book, the 2010, performing his substantial obligations. So the question is, was that a substantial obligation that was the influence so much that it's a substantial obligation? Yes, if you look at the definition of force majeure, where is the definition? Let me just open the definition again. Yeah. In this clause, force majeure means an exceptional event or circumstance which is beyond a party's control. Yes, it's beyond the party's control, which such party could not reasonably have provided against before entering into the contract. Could you have foreseen a COVID-19 situation? No, you couldn't. So that ticked the box, which having arisen, such party could not reasonably have avoided or overcome. That ticks the box. And which is not substantially attributable to the other party. If it's not a governmental contract, yes, that is force majeure. So what are your entitlements, or when can you get entitlement? This is what I say, that is your problem or your yardstick, is the contractor is prevented from performing his substantial obligations. At that stage, he can get certain entitlements. Yes, it's a force majeure. Great, you've got force majeure, but it doesn't help you much if you can't do anything with it. Do you understand the difference or the challenge? Yes, it's a force majeure, but until you actually is prevented from performing any of your obligations or substantial part of your obligations, you don't have any entitlement. Mohammed, for some reason, I don't hear you.
I'm saying that prevention from the work is basically the core yardstick, or you can say the measuring tool in it.
Yeah, you see, you can look at other options, but you are locked into the contract that you entered into. If there isn't anything in your particular conditions, if it is a standard contract, standard Pink Book, you don't have an entitlement. Yes, you've got force majeure. No, you don't have any entitlement.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments? That is possible. Just Mohammed Amir, your hand is still up. Do you have another question? Anyone else that want to have another question? Please raise your hand and then we can have a look at that. Okay. All right, if we do not have any more questions or comments, I want to thank you for your time. Mr. Mohammed Raza, I've got a hand. Please proceed. Mr. Raza?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Sir, COVID-19 is an evolving situation, and near time or the coming time, it is going to be a issue like most of the contracts are under or are going. So can we have from your side that other countries or other what they are doing right? Actually, I was running to
Okay.
reach some point. That's why
No,
actually I
no,
was
no problem. No problem.
actually I was asking that it is an evolving situation, huh? So other countries are also having their projects. So can you give us some examples of other countries what they are doing regarding the COVID-19 and how they see, like we can compare them for comparison? Thank you.
Yeah. There's actually very interesting developments. As you quite rightly say, it is evolving, and different people have got, different countries have got different ways um, of doing and managing this. Many countries has actually issued certain directives, and that is country specific. FIDIC has also issued a number of recommendations, which is, can you use, can you not use? Personal recommendation is engage in discussions. It is it's an event which is totally unprecedented. Sit around a table, get someone in to help you to negotiate or open discussions. It's so easy to lock yourself into fast or hard and fast rules, but it would definitely be better to sit around a table, start talking, find ways that can work best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, anyone else on any questions? Gentlemen, you can see my name, my email address and stuff there. You're welcome to send me some further queries. And if you want to use me on some of these items, you're more than welcome. At this stage, then, I am going to close the screen. I would like to thank Pakistan Engineering Council for giving us this opportunity to present this to you. And let's, as a final, I think there's another hand that came up, which is good. Mr. Ali Fahad Gilani, would you like to unmute your microphone and ask a question?
Sir, thank you for your session. I just want to thank you.
Okay. All right then, Mr. Abdurrahman, if you want to take over the microphone and say a few words in closure.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. At the end of this course, I'm very thankful to all the course participants, especially for the resource person, that he share a very useful and informative knowledge. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Abdurrahman, it is absolutely my pleasure. And let me just remind everyone that I saw that Pakistan Engineering Council is recording the session. I'm sure they will send you a link to the recording at a later stage. And also that the plan is to have the follow-up session in 2 weeks' time. Please register for that. In a lot of your questions, which I didn't answer, is what are the alternative? That is what we will concentrate on at that stage. What are the alternatives? There are brilliant alternatives. Don't lock yourself into a force majeure situation. if there are better alternatives. In future, force majeure may become the preferred option, but don't lock yourself into that too early. Good.
Thank you, Sarji, very much. Thank you very much.
In that case, Mr. Abdurrahman, I would say let's close the meeting and everyone go well and stay safe.
Thank you, Sarji. Goodbye.
All right, Mr. Abdurrahman, I suggest you can then close the meeting. The bottom red button, you can
Okay,
close
sir.
the meeting.
Okay, sir.
Good. Thank you, everyone. Go well.